Good day, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU, Winterville, Greenville, North Carolina. This is your tuned into the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. Our topic of discussion today, grit and grace. When I first saw those two words, I said it's very, very interesting. I saw it on a facilitator's shirt, actually, who facilitates a brain injury support group. And she's our guest today. And she has it written on the front of her shirt. I didn't want to mention the company's name because we don't want to give them free promotion or advertisement. But I just thought those two words were essential to life. What say, Apostle?
Yes. Hey, Dr. Glenn, and to our listening audience on today. We are glad to be here on today. I'm just excited about this topic. I had never heard of it, and I did get, some information on it, and I was like, okay, when Dr. Glenn said, let's do this, I said, okay, well, let's do. I think I have an overall understanding of it, and I think that all of us probably do, but to see it just so simplified, grit and grace.
But I will tell you this, when I first told you about it, you used the word plural. You said grits.
I did.
She was thinking about,
I thought we were talking about grits.
She was thinking about grits that you eat.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about grits and grace. So I initially thought we were talking about a story or something that, had to do with grits. Something to do with breakfast, grits and grace. That would be a good book. Somebody they're eating grits and they have grace. Okay, so that's what I thought it was. That's exactly what I thought. And I had to catch myself several times not to put the S. We're not talking about grits. We're talking about grit.
But if it was food, you would put the grace before the grits.
That's true. But that's why we're saying grits and grace. I'm like, that does go together. So that's why I thought it was grits.
Yeah, let's hear from our special guest, Miss Annette Mertz. Annette, can you hear us, Kay?
Yes,
So
you're a
we're
little
bringing
small, but if you could turn
We're
it up.
bringing
a
Miss
little
Annette
more.
up. Let me just a second, Dr. Glenn. We're bringing our special guest for today, and it is Miss Annette Mertz, and she is going to tell us about grit and grace. I'm not going to say S. She's going to tell us about grit and grace and give us an overall concept. She's wearing a beautiful shirt, for those of you that cannot see her, that says grit and grace. I'm interested. I'm definitely interested, Dr. Glenn.
I know.
Grit and grace. I think that description may, once we're finished with the show, it may describe a lot of people.
Yeah, and before that, we do have some what grits and grace means in the Bible. So there's some scriptures related to grace and grits.
Not
Grit and
grits
grace.
with the S, Dr. Glenn. Grits.
Grit, yeah.
Now he's saying it.
All right, let's hear from Miss Annette Mertz.
Yes. Welcome, Miss Annette Mertz, to the show. Miss Annette.
Thank you both for the invitation to join again today. I have been looking forward to this, and I actually started with the expression grit and grace several years ago, and again, I just felt that it resonates with a lot of people in different ways because, grit is often used as in a reference of being tough, or of being getting through tough times. It takes grit to overcome things, and I think for me personally, many of you know I've been on this show before. I was in a very serious accident 3 years ago. And that has definitely changed my perspective a little bit on what grit and grace can and should mean. I won't hesitate to say before my accident, I had more grit than grace. I was in a role in my company where I always tried to maintain myself in a way that was tough. I worked in a male-dominant field. I was a female. For many years, I felt that it took more grit to keep up with what was expected of me. And I always tried to hold my staff at the same level of standards that I pursued. And in hindsight, I probably didn't always have enough grace for them. But I know with practice and time, and obviously recovering from a near fatal accident, my perspective has changed on grace and for the better.
And with
Um,
4 minutes ago, I want to share a story with both of you, my co-host and Ms. Annette Merce, on what great grit means to me, because I had to go through this at one point back in the 80s when I was with the New Jersey Army National Guard. Before I was promoted to sergeant, I was ordered to go to the military academy in Seagirt, New Jersey, to be a part of the officers training and trainers workshop. So while in the academy, we did all these different things, and we got to the map reading part. We was given a map, your compass, and a protractor. He started at one point, he was supposed to end up at a specific point. Well, I ended up somewhere totally different. I could see everybody on the street looking and laughing at me, and you don't know how that felt. So I used a little bit of grit then, because I said, you know what? Okay, I should have prepared. I probably didn't prepare right, because I knew what to do. I just didn't do it correctly. But from then on, I just pulled up my bootstraps, graduated the academy, and became sergeant. Because I had to put some grit in it, get things done.
That is an awesome story, Dr. Glenn.
Yeah, thank you.
A good
Yes.
example of grit. And so I'm sure that many people can identify with grit. Let's just, if we can go and look, we have some things here that said grit and grace meaning. If we could just go over that just so that our audience understands fully. But I think the word grit can have another meaning too, other than perseverance and those type of things. Because when I heard the word grit, I thought it was grits at first, but then when I saw the word grit, what I know grit to be is like something that's on the side, or you know what I mean, grit and grind.
Well, grit is actually firmness of the mind, unyielding courage, resilience, and a passion for long-term goals. It is the stamina to keep going, even in tough times.
There we go. That's the grit that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Having grit. You have a lot of, when they would use the expression, you have a lot of grit about yourself.
Even in tough times.
You got a lot of grit in you. So, and also grace, Dr. Glenn, we have that definition there.
Well, we know that's supplied by God.
Yes, we know grace is supplied by God, but it says here kindness, empathy, and poise is how you interact with others and yourself with humility and generosity, even under pressure. I think that we need to dig into this, and we'll let Miss Annette begin to tell us about the balance, because it looks like people tend to lean towards one side or another. And when you're going through something, or you're having to press through something, sometimes you could forget, you could be more on the grit side and there's no grace. You don't think about the grace part because of the determination to get through, or the determination to succeed, and the grace part can be lost in the midst of it, especially when you're so focused. So we're going to get ready. We're going out on our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to let Miss Annette Mertz tell us what that, she did give us a little bit about what it means to her and what it means in her life. And so we're going to allow her some more time to tell us about grit and grace and this balance of having both. And so we want you to hang right in there. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn, and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams, myself, and we will be right back in a moment. Hey, if you want to call in and you have some comments you want to make on this particular subject, you can call in and be live on the air with Dr. Glenn and Miss Annette and myself. You can call in at 252-756-2008. Again, that number is 252-756-2008. You can call and be live on the air. We're going to be right back in a moment. Come on back. You need to hear the rest of this. It's a good show. See you in a moment.
You're listening to Awesome Radio, Christian media with the spirit of excellence.
Awesome Radio. Yes, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you feel it. Awesome. Awesome.
You want to say yes. Yes to hosting the baby shower. Yes to celebrating the bride. Yes to gathering the family. Yes to starting that small class or Bible study. But your home just doesn't have the space. That's where Footprints Event and Conference Center comes in. Not a big event hall, not overwhelming. Just a cozy, comfortable space created for meaningful moments. A perfect space for baby showers, bridal showers, birthday celebrations, small classes, workshops, and intimate gatherings. When your heart is ready to host, but your home simply isn't big enough. Conveniently located at 304 Evans Street in Greenville, North Carolina, let your yes become possible. For details, call 252-412-3169. That's 252-412-3169. Footprints Event Center, where every step becomes a memory.
Hello, my name is Daniel from Greenville. We appreciate you for listening to Awesome Radio.
Awesome Radio. Yes, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you feel it. Awesome.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glenn Johnson Show. Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. We're going to continue our topic of discussion today because Apostle has a question for Mr. Annette Mertz, who's our special guest. So I'll get back to Apostle and Mr. Annette Mertz.
Hey, we just posed the question to Miss Annette Mertz, and I wrote this one down. So I'm going to come at this question right away. And I was going to allow her to tell us more about how she developed grit in her life. But I wanted to ask the question to Miss Annette, do you think, and to Dr. Glenn, do you just wake up one morning and you have grit? Or is this something that you develop over time by going through and conquering different things? How is it that, you wake up and you just have it? Does everybody have it? Is this just, how do you develop some grit in your life? If either want to answer.
I do
Sure.
think, I'm sorry. I do
Go
think
ahead.
everybody has it because it's a matter of determining things. And I'm going to let Mr. Annette Mertz go right now. We have a text message from a young man by the name of James Rose. He said, great topic. Let's see. Keep going in and out. But I'll get back to that. Go ahead, Mr. Annette.
Yes, for me, I think, I was the youngest of 6 children. So, and I have always been pretty small physically. So I think for me, I had to learn to be tough, which can be equated to grit, just based on the fact that I was the youngest of 6 with 3 older brothers. So I learned a lot as a child to be able to keep up and participate with my brothers in different, family functions and sports and all that. But I think it can be learned. I think some of it comes natural, but I do think in time, depending on what it is you're overcoming, I know for me personally, as I mentioned earlier, grit came easier for me because of my accident. I was really determined to overcome my physical challenges because of my family. My children and my grandchildren were my biggest motivator. The grace piece of it has evolved with I have a lot more patience than I ever did, and I have a lot more empathy for people than I ever did because, you learn through an experience like this that everyone has a story, everyone, and you don't know what someone is going through. And so, you have to show empathy for people, even if you don't agree with them or understand them. And I tend to listen a lot more and talk a lot less. So those are the things that are helping me in this path, this new journey of learning grit and grace, balance.
And that's why I said it's a matter of determination. And I think everybody has a little grit. Like I said, it's a matter of determination. Like you said, you was determined to do things and get things done. So it was determination that helped you with your grit and grace. Mr. James Rhodes, who's in Ohio, he said, great topic. Which has been your life, grit or grace? So I think that's a question for either myself or Annette. Which has been your life, grit or grace? I would say both.
Yeah, I would say both, but like I said, before my accident, it was probably 80% grit and 20% grace. I was a pretty type A dominant personality in all that I did. Since my accident, I'm working harder to find a more equal balance. I'm still working at it, not perfect by any means, but I'm working at it.
And I think that percentage of grit and grace has more or less increased on the side of grace. I know if it pertains to me, my percentage of grace far outweighs anything.
Wow, I don't know. I have to be honest. I think I'm coming more into the grace as I'm getting older, but the grit has definitely been, determination in my younger years. And now I think I'm more learning how to walk in grace. And even today, and in this season, I've been saying to myself that you got to give yourself grace. And I have to say this, Dr. Glenn, I'm saying to myself, give yourself the grace that you give to other people.
You know what? You just touched something with me. That's exactly right, because next week I'll be 66 years old by the grace of God. Shall He wake me up in the morning by His Lord Savior Jesus Christ, our Father God, I will be 66, and I have lived more than the remaining of the time that I have left to live. Remember I said that before?
Uh-huh.
He said that's God's recall. God chooses you to stay longer, you will stay longer. And I agree with that.
Yes. And so I'm saying happy early birthday, Dr. Glenn. Because, I know you'll remind us next week, but I want to say it now. Happy early birthday. You'll be here, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you very much.
And so this is a great topic. This is a great topic. And as I said for myself, I'm reminded to give myself the grace that I give to others. See, I think when you don't give others grace, then you can't expect any back for yourself. How are you going to know what grace is unless you extend it to other people? And that's what we're talking here. It talked about kindness, empathy, and poise, and how you interact with others and yourself with humility and generosity under pressure.
Well, you know what? We got 3 minutes before we go to the break. I just want to mention I actually have 5 audio clips, but I definitely want to play one, which is 4 minutes in length. It's from the Steve Harvey motivational show on grace. You have to hear what he's saying. I'll play a portion of it, not the entire clip.
Well, something jumped out at me in that particular definition, Miss Annette, and it said under pressure. I think that makes a whole difference right there, is that how you act under pressure. Because there's a lot of people, they don't make the grace when it comes to pressure. They are acting all kinds of ways, all unseemly. That's when you see all those 4-letter words coming up. When it's under pressure, how do you act under pressure? There's a lot of people, they're great until you see them under pressure. How can you go through with poise and grace under pressure? I think that's a very important topic by itself.
Well, when we come off the next break, let me play a portion of the Steve Harvey clip, and we'll have a better understanding because he explains it quite well. You might agree, you might not agree, but I want you to hear what he said about grace and some other things. Annette.
What I think about grace?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I would agree with what you're saying. Grace under pressure is not always easy for a lot of people. And it really, I think, it really depends on what your role is. What is it you're trying to do? So if you're in an employment position and you're trying to, you know, get people to understand something or finish something, a project that is important to you, it can be easy to lose the grace because you just want it done. You want it done and you want it done right. Don't need a lot of questions. You just want it done. And so that's a key part of, you know, the transition for me is, and I actually had an old boss tell me once, not everybody is a net. And that resonated with me and stuck with
That's
me.
right. That's right.
We're
Yeah.
coming down to a break here, Miss Annette, and we're going to have to come back and finish and allow you to finish that. When I think about grace, I think about ability. I think whenever I think it empowers you and gives you ability to do something. And so I see it here on another side when you don't make it or you don't make the mark, that you still have this grace to cover you, to help you to get up, to try again, and to achieve abilities. That's the way I see this with this grace. It's on both sides. It's ability, and even when you fail, it gives you the ability to get up and try again and make
Yeah.
the mark. That's the way I see it, this grace. We're getting ready to go out on this break. We want you to come right back. Dr. Glenn has an audio. This is Awesome Radio, and we'll be right back in a moment.
It's March Madness, but this time it's not about basketball. It's about your business. This month at LJPK Business Center, we're calling it March Madness because opportunities like this don't last forever. If you've been working from your kitchen table, meeting clients in coffee shops, or praying for a space to finally call your own, this is your moment. Professional office space, conference room access, private parking in downtown Greenville. Located at 210 South Washington Street, it's conveniently located near the Pitt County Courthouse. No pressure, no chaos. Just a clean, professional environment designed to help you win. Whether you're launching something new, rebuilding, or ready to level up, LJPK Business Center is where serious entrepreneurs make serious moves. Don't sit on the sidelines this season. Make your move. For details, call 252-420-1355. Because in business, the real win is having a place to grow.
Awesome Radio.
Hello, my name is Tracy, and you're listening to Awesome Radio. Thank you.
Awesome Radio. Yes, awesome.
Welcome back to the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams. Here on Awesome Radio, WECU, 1570 AM, 107.5 FM, Winterville, Greenville, North Carolina. I'm going to play a brief portion of his audio clip by Steve Harvey from his motivational show on Grace and some other things. Then I'm going to give it back over to Apostle and Mr. Ned Mertz.
All I ever asked God for was to let me eat. Let me sit at the table with the big boy. Take me from this homelessness that I'm in and fill my coffers with spoils. You know how much I have today? I have more than I ever thought I'd ever have. I got more. God done gave me more than I asked for, because he got this thing he has called grace. Grace is, I wish I could buy it. You know, I wish I could buy grace, man. I was playing golf with an old guy that owns the Mayo Clinics. The Mayo Clinics, you know how much money you got to have to own all of them? I'm playing golf with this guy, and he taught me something. He said, Steve, listen to this. You seem like a spiritual guy. I want to share something with you. He said, justice is when you get what you deserve. Mercy is when you don't get what you deserve. He said, but grace is different from both of them. Grace is when you get what you don't deserve. Do you understand that? God has this thing that he passes out called grace. You ever heard old people say, all I want is a little more grace? Because guess what? He passes it out, and he gives you things you don't deserve. I do not deserve this life I have. I'm just telling you flat out. The money I make, where I live, what I drive, how I travel, how I vacation, I don't deserve it. I work really hard, but I really don't deserve all this. I don't. I ain't that good a Christian.
Okay, I just want to play that brief audio on what Steve Harvey was talking about, grace. Grace of what God hands out for things that you don't deserve. That's what resonates with me, because it takes a lot to get grace from God. Apostle.
Definitely. I believe that is a portion and a great, aspect of looking at grace is that, God giving you what you don't deserve.
Yeah,
So that's that, you deserve something else, but he's given you and he still bless you in spite of you not deserving it. That's the way I see that portion of it. And I think for this topic, I think that's more of the grace. I'd have to think on it a little bit, Dr. Glenn.
well, I know.
I want to untangle the two because this one it talks about going through with poise, empathy, kindness. It's dealing with how you treat other people.
Yeah,
This particular grace that we're talking about here, having the grace to go through. Because I heard Miss Annette say something, and the thought went through my mind that said, and she talked about how, when you're on the job, you just want to get it done. And I began to think, well, wow, some people want to get it done at the cost of being a demolition machine to everybody around them, pounding and just, destroying everybody just to get a goal. Doesn't care about how everybody else is left. Having a goal and destroying everybody around you to get it is that's not grace.
yeah, that's not grace.
That's not grace. So this is why I see the grace is operating in how you treat people while you're going through.
That's right. That's right.
Listen, God, I believe, and we're talking about some spiritual aspects too, that God doesn't want us to turn into some other little gremlin or some other little creature just because you're going through something. And now you have the excuse, well, I'm going through this and that, so I could just be nasty to everybody, or I could turn into something or have an alternate personality. If you're sweet, you need to be sweet all the time. You need to learn I think we need to learn how to control our emotions whenever we're going through. Because a lot of times that's when you find out the negative emotions is when you're going through. That's when you see people yelling and you see people coming out of character. And that's why I think this grace, having grit and grace, is a good balance to be able to go through determined, but still walking in the grace.
All right, we have down to 4.5 minutes. Then we'll have 2 more 10-minute talk time. So let's go back to Mr. Annette Mertz at this time before we go to the break.
Yes, thank you. I've been thinking a lot about this since we thought about having this show, and I think in the concept of grit is it's your bounce back power. And, obviously it's resonating even louder right now for me because of recovering from a near fatal accident. But I think what the balance is also providing, like you said earlier, Apostle Jackie, is the giving yourself grace is equally as hard. And I often have my family and friends say, I wish you could see you the way we see you. And I think, again, it goes back to finding the balance. And I know, God has, He's saved my life without question. And He's teaching me every day since this accident. I've learned a lot about gratitude and having grace for myself and other people. And that, like I said, it wasn't a strong, dominant characteristic of me. I know it wasn't right, but it was just part of who I was in that environment. And I think that's another key factor is making sure the environment you're in maintains a positive contribution to your life, because it can be easy to get caught up in that valley that's not always somewhere you want to be. So grit is the bounce back power, but grace is how you do it. And I think that's key role.
Miss Annette, there was a gospel song once and the name of it was Bounce Back. And they talked about how they bounced back everything that was thrown at them, that how they were able to bounce back. I love that bounce back particular theme, and or those words, that we bounce back, meaning that we return, we get restored, we get revived, we get renewed, and we continue to move on. We don't allow anything to keep us down. I used to think about the basketball, Dr. Glenn, especially when I thought about casting down bad thoughts. I would think of them like I was bouncing a basketball away from me. Like that thought is on top of the basketball and I'm bouncing it away. You know, like basketball has come towards me and I bounced it back, bounced it back away. And, you know, when I was younger, I used to have that imagery in order to sometimes operate with certain things. And that bounce back is a very powerful way of putting it, Miss Annette. I appreciate hearing you say that. And you have bounced back from your circumstances. Dr. Glenn?
Yeah, we got 1 minute before we go to the break. When we come back from the break, we'll be down to our final 20 minutes. And ladies, if you don't mind, I would like to take the last 2 audio clips, which is 1 minute each, before we close out the program. So 1 minute each for 2 more audio clips, and then I can shut that portion of the controls down. So we have 1 minute to go, Apostle. You want to take us out this break?
Yes. Hey, we still have time in case you want to call in and you want to give Miss Annette or you want to call in and you have some questions about grit and grace, and maybe you have something you want to just add about having grit and grace. And we will hear you right here live on the air. Hey, we have to go out on this break, but we will be right back. This is the Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams, and we have our guest, Miss Annette Mertz, who is on today wearing her beautiful T-shirt that says Grit and Grace. And we're so glad to have her on today. We want for you to come back. If you'd like to speak to her, if you'd like to speak to one of us, call right on in and we'll get you live on the air. This is a great subject, and we know that every one of you can operate in grit and grace.
What's the number?
252-756-2008. You can call in and you'll be live on the air with me and Dr. Glenn. This is Awesome Radio, and we'll be right back in a moment.
Awesome Radio Network is gearing up for our annual Mother's Day and Father's Day gift bag giving for the residents at McGregor Downs Health Center. $10 will sponsor 1 bag. If you would like to donate towards this community event, contact us 252-756-3137. And together we can show the love of Jesus, encourage and brighten the hearts of the residents during their stay at the McGregor Downs Health Center, Greenville. Donor's name, organization can be attached to the cards if desired. To learn more about this annual community event, contact us at 252-756-3137. That's 252-756-3137. We are a 501c3 organization under Community Care Fellowship, doing business as Awesome Radio Network, where God gets the glory.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glenn Johnson Show here on Awesome Radio. WECU 1570 AM, 107.5 FM, Winterville, Greenville, North Carolina. Let me play these final 2 audio clips, which is 1 minute each, to get those out of the way. Then I'll turn it back over to Apostle and Miss Annette Mertz.
In June of 2021, Democrats and Republicans in Congress came together to study and propose solutions to our growing economic divide.
In the wealthiest country in the world, most people are struggling economically.
People are trying to move up, and often we see things get in the way of that.
Here are 3 stories that capture the ambition, hunger, passion, and love that define resilience. The cooks, whose time is consumed by caregiving.
I met the boys. I didn't see special needs.
Alicia Villanueva, who found passion in sharing her culture's riches.
I was thinking how I can contribute to this country.
And Joseph William Graham Jr., still ambitious, in the face of injustice.
Can we achieve human dignity and build a life for your family that's stable and a legacy to leave behind them?
A legacy of grit and grace.
Title, grit, the key to overcoming challenges. Meaning, today we're discussing the word grit. Grit is a noun that refers to the determination, courage, and perseverance to achieve long-term goals, even in the face of adversity or obstacles. It signifies the strength of character and resilience needed to overcome challenges. Pronunciation. Pronouncing grit is simple, grit, with a soft G and clear enunciation. Used in a sentence. For
Okay, I'm going to conclude that audio. I'm going to conclude the audio for today's broadcast because that leaves 17 minutes for Apostle and Miss Annette Mertz. Apostle.
Yes, one of the things that I saw here, and we were looking at it from a biblical aspect, and by all of us being Christians, we can all identify with some of the biblical stories and things in the Word of God that are concerning grit and grace, grit and determined, which means, and I saw this here, I need to say this. It said, grace is God's favor and strength, which enables believers to have grit. And I remember I said at the beginning that I believe grace was to do with giving you abilities. And that's what it said here, that grace was able to enable believers to have grit. You won't have determination unless you have the grace to do it. Hey, we have a caller that is calling in right now. Let's get this caller on, Dr. Glenn.
Caller, you are live on the air on the Glenn Johnson Show. You have a comment or question?
Hey. What's that?
Go ahead, caller. Go ahead. You have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have a comment. I think this is an excellent topic. I'm commenting from Ohio, and I wanted to tell Apostle Jackie that it looks real nice what you have on, but we can't see it because the microphone is cutting it. It looks like black and white and gray, but okay. But I want to talk about the subject.
Hey, I'm caller. I'm going to move it over just so you can get a good look.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Now, I wanted to comment about grit and grace. I'm sorry. As a child, when I heard the word grace, I was associated with a gift from God, is what I always heard. And like Steve Harvey said on your message, he thought he got more than he deserved. But then I think of who's he to determine what he deserves. You know, to me, that's just my thinking. He could have helped somebody else with that. But grit has always stood up for me as being determination, trying to get from A to B or to get where you need to. So, like, I was shot with a gun back in 2010, and I think that was great. God kept me alive, see my grandchildren, and so many other things. But I think, and that's how I always term grace, has to be underneath. And I'd like to say hello to Annette also. So,
Hello, James.
I'm done with that. I just like what you guys are saying, what you're talking about. So, thank you for having me as a guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. I appreciate you calling in. God bless you. You stay safe, and we'll talk to you on the other side. Thank you for calling in, caller. Apostle and Annette.
Yeah, so when I heard the caller say that he had been shot, I think that it's going to take some grit. Grit is dealing with a mindset, is what I feel like, Miss Annette. Would you agree that it's a mindset? It's how you posture and how you think concerning your mind.
Yes, for sure. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Because
as I said, we all face challenges, and they're so individual, and they're so traumatic to each one of us in individual ways. So yes.
He says that he had been shot. It would take something. It takes some grit to get over such a traumatic event. And, even in an accident, it can be a very traumatic event, and now there's, lasting things that are going on. It takes some grit to heal.
Yes.
It takes grit and grace to heal.
Yeah.
Dr. Glenn?
I just like you both said, it takes both inspiration, encouragement, motivation of both words, little grit and grace to help get through life. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
And I hope that everybody today, that as they're listening to this broadcast, they'll be able to examine their life and see that they have the combination of grit and grace. That even though, a lot of times in everyday life, people may not look and pick out this and say, well, you're a person that has a lot of grit. When we hear big stories or we hear things that are, we look and say that those are things that are like miracles, then we can see it easily there. But I think there's a lot of people in everyday life, everybody has been through something, and they can look and see where they have, and they have grit in their life, where they're operating in grit.
If I can use this analogy for a second, I recall when Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and Michael was asked a question, about the NBA players versus his time and the new NBA players. And he said, well, what we did, what we got, we earned it. We went out there and earned it. He said, now, these NBA players coming out of high school, they just getting these contracts and getting this without putting any effort in. But them guys, they put the effort in and earned it. So that was grit to them. They put in and earned it, rather than somebody just handing them something on a silver platter.
Yes. And so you're going to have it. I think that could be also, Miss Annette, a prayer point. Lord, give me grit. Lord, give me grit to go through. Give me grit that I need for this day. Give me grit so that I can make good decisions and I can persevere.
I thought that were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I one of the things that really has been resonating with me is the grit is the endurance and the refusal to give up when you're facing a trial or tribulation. But grace is staying the course that God has set for you. And it's the balance of gratitude that brings them all together.
Yeah, you know what? Let me just say one more thing before we go to the break. Come back with our final 10 minutes. I was thinking about that the other day. Because, I was raised in a Baptist church because my grandfather was a pastor. And what we had to look. The look is, did you ever get to look? The look is like my mom was in the choir. And when she was sitting in the pews laughing and stuff, and when she looked at us, all the laughing and twitching around stuff stopped. Because we received a look. That look from my mom. You wait till you get home. We were so grateful she didn't tear us up. Apostle.
Definitely, Dr. Glenn. We're getting ready to go out. I think, is this our last break, Dr. Glenn?
I believe so.
Looks like this is our last break, and we want to give you callers again another chance. We have a few more minutes if you want to call in and have something to say on our show today. Just know that you will be live on the radio. And this is the Dr. Glenn Johnson Show, Motivations with Glenn and Apostle Jacqueline Cullins Williams, right here on Awesome Radio.
Awesome Radio.
Hello, my name is Dr. Wiley Nifong. Thank you for listening to Awesome Radio.
Awesome Radio. Yes, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you feel it.
Health Pro is a licensed home care organization and a trusted provider of in-home care services with skilled nursing and personal care services. When your elderly parents live alone, there are many things that can be done to make general housekeeping and personal care easier. We are located at 408 West Arlington Boulevard, Suite 101C, Greenville. At Health Pro, our services provide a relief for the aging and the disabled population who prefer to recover in the comfort of their homes. Our services expand beyond the normal, and we are currently serving 17 counties in eastern North Carolina. Veteran personal care services, companion care, sitter care, respite care, private pay home care, pediatric, adolescent personal care services are just a few of the many services we offer. Health Pro, a local, trusted, leading provider of in-home care services. 252-364-8114. That's 252-364-8114.
Thank you for listening to the Awesome Radio Network from whatever means you're listening. We're on the call sign of WECU 1570 AM and 107.5 FM, Greenville, Winterville, the Pitt County area, and parts of Kinston. On WNOS at 1450 AM and 102.3 FM, New Bern, Bayboro, Havelock, Pollocksville. On WBISLP 106.9 FM, our Hispanic Christian radio. On WYLT 100.3 FM, Rocky Mount, Nash, Edgecombe County. Don't forget, we are worldwide and global at awesomeradionetwork.org. Do you have something to say? A message for the masses? Reach us at 252-756-3137. That's 252-756-3137. We are Awesome Radio Network, where God gets the glory.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Glenn Johnson Show here on Awesome Radio, 107.5 FM, 1570 AM, WECU, Winterville, Greenville, North Carolina. We have reached our final 10 minutes of today's broadcast. So before I give it back over to Apostle and Miss Annette Mertz, I just want to thank Miss Annette for coming on today, sharing her commentary on grit and grace. I certainly appreciate it. We certainly appreciate it. And the Awesome Radio listeners appreciate it. Here's Apostle Jacqueline Cullins-Williams and Miss Annette Mertz.
Yes, I think I'm going to turn it over. I know Miss Annette still has, she looks like she has a few more things that she wants to get off her list and tell us. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Miss Annette, and let you tell us anything that we may have missed on today.
Thank you very much. One of my final thoughts, I guess, for today was about overcoming hardship and surviving a personal crisis by working hard to move forward takes grit. And with that, while allowing oneself forgiveness and compassion takes grace. And I think that's where I'm still working through that. I know I've overcome challenges, I didn't expect to, and I know my medical staff maybe didn't expect me to. And I believe that's through the grace of God and his willingness and his guidance and his help to help me overcome some of those challenges. I think...
Miss Annette, can we talk about I know we talked about being able to overcome, but there may be a small population of people that need the grace to help them up because they feel like they're giving up.
Yes.
Or they feel like they have fallen, and given up some time. What do you think about grace working for those particular people to help them get up again and to finish the race?
Yes, I agree 100%. It can be, and it is very challenging to overcome that sense of feeling like it's just easier to give up. And I think, and as we've said, there are a lot of different circumstances, but it really takes prayer and listening to God and asking God for guidance and help, because we don't do this on our own. We don't do this with family. We're blessed with family. We're blessed with medical people to help us. But at the end of the day, it's God that guides us and protects us and heals us and helps us navigate this journey. And without, finding a way to find comfort and belief in his message and his belief in us. And I will be very honest, religion, I always believed in God. Religion was never a big part of my life. Never. Church was not something I grew up in. And learning the Bible was not something I grew up with. So this has been also a part of my healing, is to try to listen and learn more through the Bible.
Good. Yeah, I would agree with you.
And Dr. Glenn, when she started talking and we were talking about those who feel like they may want to give up or feel like they've given up in the past, I just felt such a great swelling and stirring in my spirit to just tell you, you can get up again. That just because it seemed like you failed one time, or it seems like you didn't make, or you wasn't operating with the grit, or felt like you didn't have it, doesn't mean that you can't get a second win and get back up and go again. You can get
Yes.
back up and you can move again. You can, oh, God, give me the grit to finish it this time, to persevere through and to make it through. I
Yes.
believe that's a great mindset of
Yeah.
never giving up. That's what grit really is
Yeah.
never giving up.
You are giving up.
Yeah, like that time I explained to you about when I was in the military academy, when I failed the map reading course, but I passed everything else. If I would have just gave up after failing that map reading course, I would have remained a specialist, never would have been promoted to sergeant. So I didn't give up, kept going, graduated the academy, and received my promotion to sergeant.
Yes, I was just going to share really quickly. One of the things that I learned very early on was from my daughter.
Miss Annette, we have one more caller that's coming through. Let us.
Okay, go ahead.
Caller, you're live on the air on the Glenn Johnson Show. You have a comment or question?
Yes, good evening. Good evening. This is the Pepper Man here.
Hey, Pepper Man.
Yeah, I like that topic y'all was talking about. But if you remember back in the day, back in the older days, they used to call grit newspaper. Do you remember that?
I don't particularly.
You used to call them grit salesmen?
No, because I'm originally from the Jersey Shore.
Oh, okay. Well, around here in the country part where I'm from, that's what we used to call the newspaper man when he come to grit salesman.
Oh, really?
I thought about that when I heard y'all saying grit. I said, yeah, that's another name we used to call the newspaper way back then. Yeah. But I like this version better though. Grit and grace.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Y'all be blessed now.
Thank you. We have, thank you, caller, for calling in. We have 3.5 minutes to go. Mr. Net.
Sure. And I'm sorry, I really couldn't hear the caller, so I don't know what his message was, and I kind of forgot what I was going to say.
He was saying he liked his version of Grit and Grace better because he was asking if we ever heard of Grit, because they used to call Grit the newspaper that they used to receive where he was from, I guess some part of North Carolina. But I told him I was from the Jersey Shore, so it was news to me that they called the newspaper Grit.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that the part about not giving up, Apostle Jackie, is that it's I have my sister shared with me an expression, drops fill buckets. And I think that's a big part of it, is that when you're going through something, it may feel like you're not making progress at all, but just keep trying. Don't give up. And
Absolutely.
My daughter uses the expression, just because it's hard doesn't mean you can't. And that was one I had to learn early on as well, is there were things I wasn't able to do that I had done my whole life. And I just had to learn a new way to do it again. And so those are two things that I think are helpful in the don't give up process.
Let me give you my final thought on all this. It's better to be prepared and not go than to go and not be prepared. Because what you're going to do if you go and you're not prepared for something. But if you prepare yourself and go, it's probably be prepared for what's in store. So always be prepared, even if you don't go, rather than go and don't be prepared.
Or be prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we don't map out the worst case scenario. We only look at the best case scenario of what things could be. But then when we're hit with something, we didn't prepare for the worst case scenario. And I think that in life, that if we did that with a lot of things that we were looking to do, what's the worst case scenario and how are you going to handle that?
Well, we have 1 minute and 30 seconds before we end the broadcast. I want to thank Mr. Ned Mertz for coming on. with us today for this special broadcast on Grit and Grace. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. I want to thank our callers for calling in. And I'll say this, God bless you all. May the Lord take a liking to you and have many blessings in your life. Apostle, we'll close us out with 1 minute to go.
Hey, we're grateful that Miss Annette came on. We are so grateful for your insight and helping us to bring this particular topic to light and showing us how to discuss it. And we're grateful to hear your story, Miss Annette. And we're always grateful to have you on this particular platform. We thank you so much for sharing with us on today. And so we want to say to our callers and to our viewers, our listening audience, that we will be right back here next week at 3 o'clock, and we'll be having another subject. Hey, today is April Fool's Day, and don't be no fool. Have some grit and grace, and don't be no fool.
I want to thank all our listeners for listening today. God bless you. May the Lord take a liking to you. May the Lord continue to bless you all the days of your life as we approach 2027 in a couple months. God bless you all. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Miss Annette.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.